folks another minute or two to join, and we'll get started. All right, well, it's 7:30. I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight for the Edmonston Road Sidewalk Project discussion. This is a really important discussion to make sure that we're all on the same page about what is going on. And I want to thank everybody for taking time tonight to meet with us. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Rigg to see if you'd like to say any few words, and then we'll make a few introduction of who's on the call in terms of panelists.
Thanks, Stu. I would only add my appreciation for staff and for our other guests who are on the call tonight, and my appreciation for residents for really advocating for this particular project for many years. I know that the walkability, especially in the Edmonston Road corridor, has been a priority of the Yarrow and College Park Estates community for many years. It will provide access to the metro station, better access to the park at Old Calvert Road, which I think is called the Paint Branch Community Park, and safer access to the heavily used bus stops along Edmonston Road. So I'm very excited that the project's going forward. I think residents are already seeing a lot of changes. That's one thing that we're talking about today, and we just want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable about the changes that are underway and where the whole project is headed. So thanks, Stu.
Yeah. And John, I also wanted to recognize former council member Rob Day is on the call, and he was part of the strong effort to put Yarrow and College Park Estates advocating to get complete streets in that area. So Rob, we definitely appreciate you joining us tonight. Steve, I'll turn it over to you to say who's here from the city and from the consultant side.
Okay, let me see who's here. All right, I'm Steve Halpern. I'm the city engineer. We have Brian Morgan, who is our engineering consultant of record for the sidewalk project. We have David Wigglesworth. He's our city horticulture, works for our city horticulturist. And we have Robert Marsili, our director of public works.
And I think we also have Jacob on the call, Steve.
Jacob Vassalotti, our GIS coordinator.
Great, and we'll get started in a moment. I wanted to see if okay, we just had the mayor pro tem was on. I just wanted to see if she wanted to say a few words, but she just jumped off. It's a busy day at the city. Well, there she is back. Mayor pro tem Mitchell, did you want to say any words? You're on mute, Mayor Pro Tem.
No, I have nothing to say, but I look forward to hearing the information.
Okay, great. And we also are joined by Brenda Alexander, the city arborist. So thank you so much for joining, Brenda. And we have Bill Gardner, the assistant city manager, as well as Kenny Young, the city manager on the call. So I'd like to get us started by just talking a little bit about, how we got here, right? So what were some of the initial steps? And one of the initial steps is, my understanding is, around the 2017 to 2018 time period, the city undertook an effort to identify streets, corridors that should be focused on for, pedestrian safety, bicyclist safety, and things like that. So, Steve, can you speak to that study, or John Rigg, if you have any comments on that?
So 2016 is when the city adopted its complete street policy. And then 2017 is when staff, we prepared the street matrix in determining future sidewalk projects throughout the city, looking at the connectivity between the neighborhoods, destinations. And then it was in 2018 when we had A. Morton Thomas review our matrix, review our street networks, and they made recommended priority locations for installing sidewalks. And they, but the mayor and council, asked for prioritizing 5 street segments. And those street segments were Edmonston Road, which is currently under construction, 52nd Avenue between Huron and Narragansett Parkway in the Hollywood neighborhood, which is under design, Cherokee Street between 48th Place and Rhode Island, which was completed last year. The construction was completed. Bowdoin Avenue between Erskine and Harvard, which was constructed 2 years ago. And we have St. Andrew's Place between Duke Street and DePaul, which is on a waiting list. So that they were the 5 streets that were prioritized by A. Morton Thomas, the mayor and council back in 2018.
Great. And I think, John, we talked about this before. It might be appropriate if we can promote Rob Day. He was part of that discussions back at that time period. And I think it'd be great to hear from Rob on his thoughts about that process and what he saw come forward.
Okay, I just promoted him.
Rob, to put you a little bit on the spot, we appreciate you joining, and if you are available to speak to the process, that would be excellent.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. So a lot of this process really, came about of safe streets and safe connections to the parks that are around the neighborhood. And one of the problems we had along Edmonston Road, I've heard a lot of things being thrown around, but one of the things we wanted to do is make sure that people were able to walk on Edmonston Road without endangering their lives. If anybody has driven on Edmonston Road at night, it's a little dark. The other thing is we have young families in our neighborhood that in order to get to Old Calvert Park, they would have to drive, because you're not going to push a kid in a carriage down Edmonston Road and down the actual Old Calvert Road to the park. That is why we looked at, trying to create a way that people could traverse along Edmonston Road, get to the neighborhoods, get to the bus stops, and be safe going to Old Calvert Park. So we worked with parking planning to get their input on this, and we addressed the neighborhood several times actually, where we actually sat down with neighbors and talked about which side of the street we're going to actually put the sidewalk on. We did have some neighbors who pushed back very hard about having the sidewalk on their side of the street. One of the main things we also wanted to include in this was the fact that we needed drainage along Edmonston Road, which would mean that we had to put in a curb. Sometimes during the winter, we would have 3 and 4 inches of thick ice on Edmonston Road, which creates a danger in itself also. So there's multiple things that we were trying to solve with this, and the perfect opportunity was to look at how we could put a sidewalk down Edmonston Road. We put in the crosswalks. We also put in talked about the raised crossways to slow traffic down, because I know at Knoxville Avenue, there's plenty of times as I began to pull out, somebody just ran right straight through the stop sign there. So there's many safety reasons and a lot of reasons why people need to really realize that this was a project that had to be done for public safety, for community connectivity to the parks around us, and the ability to just have a better quality of life along Edmonston Road. We know that the trees were going to there were going to be some trees taken out. I have to say I'm a little shocked about how many trees have been taken out. But we also know that there's going to be trees placed back there. This is also a good opportunity for the city to really push to have a barrier wall put there to stop the sound of cars and things on Edmonston Road. We do know a bunch of those trees were seeing disease and things like that. So, it's an overall good project. It's a very good project for the community, and it's something we needed to do to raise the quality of life in Calvert Hills, in Yarra and Estates. Oh, and also we did approach Berwyn Heights about continuing the sidewalk up Edmonston Road. And they declined at that time because they couldn't do it.
They declined at the time. I had a recent conversation with some council members that make me think that they might be willing to reconsider that. So that would be an obvious, and really great opportunity to continue connectivity throughout the area.
Especially since all the way up to Pontiac Street, if there's very few trees they would have to remove to put in that sidewalk. So.
And we've had recent strong conversation with the county and even our state delegation about extending the sidewalk from the intersection of Edmonston and Old Calvert Road into the park as well. And so, this is starting that that sidewalk network, increasing safety. And Rob, that was very well said on the background and the importance of this project. So Steve, the designs have been underway. 2000, 2001. In February of 2022, the 90% designs were presented to council. I do believe one of the minor changes that occurred at that time were to ensure that the raised sidewalks were raised crosswalks, excuse me, were included in the designs, and those have been done, and that was based on resident feedback. And so, I think those are the timeline of where we are. And John, I'll see if there's any additional comments you have for this.
No, nothing to add. I'm eager to hear what the city engineer has to say and Steve's presentation.
Okay. I guess regarding the sound barrier wall, in 2019, we requested the state to consider us a sound barrier wall along Kenilworth. And they denied our request based on that the homes that were built along Edmonston Road were constructed after Kenilworth was constructed, which is, it's really close because some of the homes were constructed when you looked at old building permits, but they refused us. But
it doesn't mean that we cannot, reach back out, right? So there are changes in personnel at the state that occur, and this could be a good opportunity, to reach back out to them and demonstrate how, in aligning with the stormwater requirements and adding doing the regrading required to add the sidewalk, it is significant removal of trees, which are a noise barrier. And so it could be a good opportunity in the near future for us to reach back out to them on that.
Yes, I found that with changeover in state personnel, we get different answers each time we ask the same question. So that, we could be ready to do that again. Anyway, Edmonston Road is 4,100 feet long, from Old Calvert Road to the town of Berwyn Heights border. All the homes are on the west side of Edmonston Road. And then the east side is we have that vacant wooded property that it's owned by the state of Maryland. The roadway is 26 feet wide. It's kind of got a little bigger since.
Steve, can I pause you there? And Jacob, is it possible to share your screen to show some of the diagram as Steve is discussing this?
I do not have access to any of the plans at this current moment.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Brian plans. Brian?
I do have a plan open. If
Yeah, sure.
I have a black and white plan that I can share. Let me jump to the appropriate section and we can kind of just walk through.
It's also available on the city's website as well. That if I'm okay with sharing my screen if that's okay with everyone. I think the colored version might be a little bit more intuitive for folks to follow as Steve is speaking to this. So give me 1 second to bring that up. So for folks who are on the call, I think likely if you're on this call, you've been following along with the outreach on where documents are, but there are documents on the city's website that demonstrate design plans and other information that is readily available. So let's see if I'm able to share screen. Let's see. Share. Okay, so are you able to see my screen? I'll work on trying to make it a little bit bigger here.
All right, so you're at the intersection with old Calvert Road.
Yeah, and so I think it's just be helpful to if you know kind of, this is the southernmost extent is Old Calvert Road. You see we have an intersection here where with Radcliffe, south of Radcliffe, the sidewalk is on the west side of Edmonston Road. Between Radcliffe and Bryn Mawr, the sidewalk is on the east side of Edmonston Road, and then there's the portion a little bit beyond Bryn Mawr that is on the west side. And so, Steve, I believe you were talking about the center line and the width at the center line. But if there's any other, you can continue what you were saying. I just thought it'd be helpful to have a visual in front of folks as you discuss this.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, the road width is about 26 feet wide, but it varies throughout the entire length. There's 4 intersecting streets going from south to north: Radcliffe Drive, and Knoxville Drive, Wellesley Drive, and Bryn Mawr Road. And there are 8 bus stops located along this road, 2 at each of the intersecting streets, 1 on each side of the street. The east side shoulder of Edmonston Road is mildly steep and slopes down to a stream. That's pretty much what the area looks like.
And Steve, if you were out there, at the site, you'll notice that there's different stakes, right? And stakes are labeled LOD, limits of disturbance. Can you speak to that? And does that align with some of this green on here, or how does that align with the diagram?
Okay, the green is pretty much the LOD. It's the limit of disturbance. It's what the contractor is putting in his silt fence following that line. And then that area from the line up to the road will be cleared to some degree for the there's 6 biofilter areas to collect and treat stormwater. And I guess, well, they're the deeper sections, and then the rest is just the LOD follows the toe of this slope all the way to the border with the town of Berwyn Heights. But that's the area where you see most of the where you see all the clearing. There won't be any clearing beyond that LOD.
And just to make sure, it's my understanding that the caricature of trees predominantly on the west side of Edmonston Road, those represent potential replantings. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, they're street trees on the west side.
Okay. And it looks like there's one here on the east side, but I think every other one is on the west side. And it's my understanding the city is going to do some additional outreach to property owners where there's a potential for planting a tree in the right of way between their property and Edmonston Road, or even if it's possible on their private property to plant a tree to help with reforestation, as well as to help with the noise and other impacts. Can you comment on the areas that are being cleared? We talked about the bioswale areas. Do we know whether or not they are going to be revegetated? If that is the case, is that going to be just ground vegetation, some grasses, or is it going to be bushes? Can someone comment on that?
Brian, can you answer that? It's mostly, it's not.
Sure. And, I can say, first, thank you for the opportunity to be here and, to support this project on behalf of the city of College Park. It's been an honor for us to be involved, and the pedestrian mobility that the city is promoting is second to nothing that I've seen. It's impressive. I can talk through some of the challenges that we have faced on this project, and a lot of that is tied to the slopes that the sidewalk area, we're putting in a 5-foot wide, 2% cross slope or less sidewalk. And that area, really starts kind of sloping gradually from the edge of the existing pavement. So we've had to flatten out that area to place the sidewalk. The largest areas of impacts are, as you have noted, where these bioswales are being placed. And the challenge with vegetation in those locations, so the facilities themselves will be planted, and we've worked with Brenda to make sure that we're honoring the pollinator species that the city is promoting. So those inside the facilities will be planted, but on the walls, on the outside, the side slopes where it ties back into the existing grade, the slopes are rather steep. In order to be able to tie those in as quickly as possible and prior to any stream or conveyance channel impacts along that bottom edge. So
could I pause there just to make sure I heard
Sure.
correctly and just want to reiterate. So it sounds to me like there will be vegetation planted in the green area that are being developed as a bioswale, and that's in coordination with the city arborist, Brenda Alexander, and you're going to look at pollinator species, but from my conversations with folks that are in this immediate area, also looking at vegetation that would substantially shield noise, and including in the winter months. I think that would be, there are some beautiful hollies along this area that many residents are very supportive of, and so just wanted to clarify that and also provide that comment that I've received from numerous residents. But back to you, Brian.
So we are certainly interested in partnering with the city and accommodating the residents and being able to minimize any noise pollution that we can from Kenilworth Avenue. The interior of the facilities, the flat bottom of these bioswales will be planted with new vegetation. On the side slopes, the slopes are steep enough. They're 2-to-1 slopes, and they are steep enough that it would be very challenging to get vegetation to survive on those slopes. And then there's also limitations on what we can do on the embankments because the root intrusion into those constructed slopes are problematic from a long-term maintenance perspective. They can jeopardize the integrity of the embankment. So we have planted in areas adjacent to the sidewalk or recommended plantings adjacent to the sidewalk in areas where we've had to clear. But the bioswales will be the most disturbed in this process. So we look at every project. It's a giant puzzle, and numerous pieces that we've got to pull together. And pedestrian mobility and safety has been at the forefront of this project. And having the bus stops out there, and then people without a real safe way to access those has been kind of the leading concern. With the clearing that is proposed, we have 115 trees that we have proposed, in total to be credited toward the reforestation component as, just being good stewards to compensate for the clearing that has been required.
Great. And we are, I just stopped sharing my screen so I could see the question and answers that are coming in. We're definitely getting a multitude of great questions. So I think it's, so we have an individual that is also putting comments in there that's not appropriate. So we do have, one of the questions that I see here is can we speak about the raised crosswalks? So it's, can you compare them to what we see as, speed bumps maybe in the neighborhoods, and how do they compare in terms of width or change in grade compared to what speed bumps are in certain neighborhoods?
Our speed humps, that's our standard raised crosswalk. It's they call them flat tops. They're 22 feet long. They have a 6-foot rise, a 10-foot flat section, and then 6-foot goes down. And they're 3.5 inches tall.
How does that compare to so 3.5 inches tall? What does that compare to another type of speed bump?
That's what we installed. We just installed 5 of them over on between 51st Avenue and Branchville. This is our standard speed hump.
So the difference is it's got a longer top to it, right? That's what kind of will be a different context to it.
Yes, because the top will be a raised section for a crosswalk, so the pedestrian would be higher, more visible.
Okay. So Ali, hopefully, I see you asked that question. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, feel free to chime back in. I see there's a question here about the sidewalk and additional features, right? So we mentioned that there are 8, I think, bus stops along Edmonston Road. An individual, Cynthia, mentioned that there are trash, of course, that accumulates there. And so interested to understand if there's a platform or any type of ability to add stationary trash cans. I know in speaking to other residents, you know, whether or not a speed camera ever is installed there will be the discretion of the community. But you never know if that would be requested, or even a noise camera. You know, as we're looking at potentially that could be in College Park in the future. Can we speak to the fact of if there's room or anticipating putting other features along the sidewalk, such as trash cans? Looks like Robert, you have a response.
Yeah, Robert Marcioli, Public Works. We're happy to look at those features and improve in any receptacles that we could possibly install out there. We also do a once a week patrol of the Edmonston Road. We'll make sure that we take care of that issue, and where we can install additional trash and recycling receptacles in the bus stop areas, I think we'll try to do that for sure.
That sounds good. I think there are specific questions regarding, you know, existing. I mentioned the hollies before that are there that, you know, some folks definitely cherish. I mean, they're beautiful. There's also daffodils that have been planted by residents. And can we comment on, you know, are they just being currently discarded and we're hopeful to replant those? How are we addressing the current vegetation? And then I believe it was already addressed that we are going to be replanting, but are there any comments on that?
Because the current daffodils, the plantings along the edge of the road, they're gone, because that's where the sidewalk is going. The curb's going to be 6 inches high, and then it's going to go out 2% out 6 feet, 6 feet 8 inches. So that area is, you know, it's going to be raised. So those plantings won't survive.
Okay, Steve, there's a technical question here. The speed bumps, when they're 3.5 inches, what speed are they rated at? So is that intended for a vehicle to slow to 10 miles per hour, 5 miles per hour? I don't know that off the top of my head. I was just, someone asked a technical question along that lines.
25 miles per hour.
So
Be able to
okay.
drive over it comfortably at 25 miles per hour. Any faster, you'll feel discomfort.
Okay. And Ali, I can see your comment, and I know that doesn't necessarily align with what we're looking for, but you know, this is an initial step, and we can work together to look at other options as well.
Steve, Stuart, can I? Yeah, I mean, so if speeding after we install the raised sidewalks or the raised crosswalks continues to be a concern along Edmonston Road, we can ask Steve and his staff to do a speed study as well, and that will help us understand what the true behavior is on the street, but also perhaps help us make the case for provision of a speed camera, which we you know, have fairly wide authorities to be able to use in the city of College Park now. So you know, let's focus on getting the engineering done, and then we can see how that changes behavior, if it changes behavior, and if not, we can look at other opportunities. Because I go for walks along Edmonston Road like everybody on this call probably, and yeah, it can be kind of harrowing sometimes with the darkness and the speeding, but the sidewalk will help a lot with that.
I think it's a good point that this is not the end of what we can do in this area, right? There's going to be additional measures that we can take, whether it's traffic calming or continuous replanting. I think, you know, the city is committed to being a steward of the environment and really putting strong tree ordinance and things like that. And, you know, we do have projects like this that you know, are tough because of what's happening here. And it is pros and cons. But, you know, I think many of you that I spoke to, and actually the super majority, see the pros outweighing the cons. But we need to make sure that we continuously revisit replanting as much as possible. But can we talk about what is the process for, you know, letting folks know that there could be a tree planting in the right of way in front of their home, as well as just what are the plans for replanting?
Regarding the tree plantings in front of the homes, Monday we were planning, well, we're going to send out letters with a plot of the homes, well, a letter to the homeowner with a plot indicating in green where the tree is going to be, is proposed. You know, they have the option to, I guess, the not reject it or relocate it. But they'll go out this Monday. And then
And do we know how they were able to respond? Will it be through email, a survey? How is the intended response?
It'll be probably through a survey.
Okay. So there will be a link in the letter that they can go online and indicate that they're supportive of what's being proposed. They'd like to make some adjustments, or they'd like to reject the tree planting either on their property or substantially close to their property.
Right, and we'll be glad to, you know, come out and meet with each person, you know, if they don't understand the map or they want to show us where they want to put it, and that's part of the process.
Great. And I think I conveyed this to a few folks, but in knocking on doors of residents that households face Edmonston Road, there was at least one individual that indicated that, you know, getting their news online through email or newsletter online or social media wasn't how they do it. But they did suggest, you know, the here and now was something that they actively read our city newspaper. And if we could put some information on there for those type of residents for these type of projects, they would be very supportive of that. And so I just wanted to convey that comment that I received. And I do. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
If they want to call us directly, that's, you know, we'll respond that way too.
Steve and Stu, I would suggest that we talk next just about timelines and what to expect next. I think we provided a pretty good overview of the project, but what will people see and when will they see it, and when will we expect that it'll be substantially complete and we'll be able to repave that road finally? Because I know that the potholes and the roadway surface has been a point of pain for probably a year and a half now.
2 years. Yes, we're looking at substantial completion in August. By the end of August, the road paved, the raised crosswalks in, striped. And depending on the weather, you know, for the trees, we don't want to plant them when it's too hot in the summer. That could be into the fall. But no, the road should be smooth, paved, striped. Yeah, we're looking by the end of August.
Okay. When will the heavy construction really begin, Steve? Because right now it's mostly sort of site prep.
Okay, so they're moving towards Bryn Mawr with the sediment and erosion control. Once all that's in, we have the county come in and do the inspection. And once we get a green light on that, then they're going to put the stormwater structures in the bioswales. And then they're going to start putting in the curb right after that. So you're going to see the curb moving and the sidewalk following, and then each of the biofilters will be stabilized as the sidewalks are past them to keep the drainage, to keep the media clean. And then once the sidewalk is done, then the road will be milled. Well, I guess it's up to the contractor. It'll be milled. Then these raised crosswalks go in, will be resurfaced and striped.
Are there any hard curbs or gutters on the west side or of Edmonston Road when the sidewalk is on the east side? Is the construction basically isolated to either the west side, south of Radcliffe, north of Bryn Mawr, or the east side between Radcliffe and Bryn Mawr?
Well, there's no new curbs on the west side.
Okay.
We will repair some of the broken asphalt sections, but there was no concrete curbs planned on the west side.
And there are some electric poles as well as some fire hydrants. Are those going to be encompassed within the sidewalk at any point? Or are those always, but between the sidewalk in the forested area? Can you speak to that?
It'll be behind the sidewalk.
Behind the side. Okay.
Most of it will be behind the sidewalk. WSSC did have our plans when we shared with them when they were doing the water main work that we were proposing a sidewalk, and they were to put their fire hydrants, further behind where they currently were.
So there was a question in the chat, Steve, about contractor start times. Evidently, there have been people who've been starting around 6:30 a.m., which does strike me as early. What does the city instruct contractors in terms of start time, stop time?
It's 7:30 to 4.
Okay, and if they find that people are starting early, they should call engineering and make you all aware of it so that we can.
We directly, I will say something to the contractor tomorrow morning just to make sure that they understand that they're not to start any equipment before 7:30. They can show up on site, but they cannot start any equipment.
Thanks, Steve. And there's a couple questions in the chat about vegetation, revegetation, and tree planting. One of the questions is the tree planting approval process, and without any further context, I can only assume that the inquirer is referring to how we're going to interact with residents who may have an opportunity for a street tree. And I assume that would be probably somebody from Public Works, probably likely Miss Alexander as our city arborist, would try to make an appointment with the resident to discuss the opportunity for a street tree. And I think most, if not all cases, and Mr. Marsili, feel free to, or Miss Alexander, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, the city would look forward to actually doing that planting. And is that right?
That's absolutely correct. We would be more than happy to work with any tree planting process, approval process with any resident in the area there, citywide. So not sure exactly what the question is, but we're absolutely here to help, and they can call our office. They could give Steve's office a call, and we'll be happy to work with them.
Thank you, Mr. Marsili. So as residents look at those plans and see those big fluffy poofy green trees on the plan, those are where we've identified likely locations for street trees. So if your property is one of those properties, you should expect to hear from us, but in the event you don't hear from us, reach out to Mr. Marsili or Ms. Alexander, and we'll work with you, because the city's, these are tough projects, as Stu mentioned earlier, because you need to build infrastructure to have the city progress, and in this case also effectively manage stormwater so there's not so much flooding in the area, but that necessitates the loss of some trees. So we really want to prioritize identifying opportunities to plant new vegetation and new trees whenever and wherever we can. So I hope that answers that question. There's a hydrology question, Stu. Do you understand it? I'm not sure I do.
I don't know if I see that one. Can you speak to it?
Sure, yeah. So it's from Renata. She writes, won't curbs block the natural water flow down into the buffer between Edmonston and Kenilworth, potentially leading to problems? Why was all the vegetarian stripped from near the corner of Old Calvert? And do the plans indicate no replacement of vegetation in that area? And then a question about tree density. All of which are beyond my area of expertise.
Oh, okay, yeah. So the first part is about the curb. So it's assuming that the sidewalks, the 5-foot sidewalks, are slightly raised, right? And so they theoretically act as a quasi dam as water is trying to go into the area that the bioswales are in. So I'm sure there's inlets and other things like that that are installed. Steve, can you speak to that, or Brian? I don't know who wants to speak to that.
There are, okay, to help the water get from the street into the bioswales off the road. They're like bridge sections of a sidewalk called cog inlets, and they're spaced out according to the hydraulic design to move the water off the road into the bioswales. Brian, if you want to add more to that.
Sure. No, I mean, that's a great summary. They're basically just through channels where the sidewalk, it's a traditional inlet without any subgrade structure, and it allows the water to just pass through under the sidewalk. So we have those in areas, the first thing we did was analyze what the existing high and low points throughout the road section, where those occur, and being able to maintain those drainage patterns. But then we have also had to capture separate areas of impervious and send those to these bioswales. So the bioswales, the flow will enter through that same function of, kind of that bridged sidewalk section that will allow water to flow under them and reach the bioswales. So for the most part, we haven't altered any of the drainage courses. We are intercepting some of the flow and sending it to these bioswales for filtration, just for water quality.
That makes sense. And then Steve, there's another question. I believe you coordinated with a resident in Yarrow about the signs. Can you speak to that?
Yes, to provide sidewalks to the bus stops that go around the sign. Well, to get to the bus stops, you have to walk past the signs. So I coordinated with Mr. McDonald, showed him out in the field where the edge of the sidewalk is going to be, to the edge of the plantings, and I showed him to the extent what we're going to disturb. As we put the forms in, it's going to go 1 foot over, so that's probably the most disturbance you're going to have at one particular location. But then once we take the forms out, then you regain the planting area back. But no, we want to make sure that we're not taking anything away. If if we could make more space, well, actually, you're going to get more space at Knoxville, because you have that inlet back there, and we're bringing the curb further out into the street, so there'll be more planting area.
All right, I'm looking through the questions, and I think we've answered substantially all of them that are remaining. They've been answered in some form or another, but Councilmember Rigg, I wanted to see if you had any others that you wanted to elevate.
Yeah, I was just going to summarize. There's a question from Bree about who inquires what's going to be covering the area that loses the plant cover and planting around the swales. And we covered earlier in the conversation how we were going to substantially revegetate the area around the swales, and also there will be some vegetation actually planted in the swales that can tolerate having wet feet. So that's the strategy there. We can't say in all honesty, I mean, there's clearly going to be disturbance, but it's our goal to try to keep the long-term disturbance minimized by fairly substantial replanting. Somebody else also asked who asked for the sidewalk, and I think Mr. Day covered that extremely well in the beginning. He's been an advocate for this for over a decade. But in essence, a lot of people who are users of Edmonston Road have been asking for that sidewalk for a very long time.
And it was part of a complete streets analysis throughout the entire city, and this was elevated as one of the critical corridors that needed it. So, and that initiation was started in 2016, and it was selected in approximately 2018.
Yeah, thanks, Stu. That's right. And I think we made it through, everybody. I know that there's I think we could probably have a subsequent conversation when we know more about the vegetation and revegetation. That's something that's on our radar screen already, I believe, for April. Is that right, Mr. Halpern, potentially? And we could do a short conversation about vegetation, because there are a lot of questions about that. We'll have a lot more detail as we develop that vegetation plan. Right now, as you can see, we're focusing principally on engineering, but we'll work on that vegetation plan and get back to the community with more details there.
Yes.
There's one last question that came in right at the end. Will there be any lighting along the street?
Well, currently there's a light on every pole on that street. I mean, if there's a request there's 70-watt lights. So that's the bottom brightness. if the community wants to go up a notch, we can certainly do that. But that's a separate project.
And I do believe the Yarrow Civic Association has a meeting, I think it's April 22nd or something like that. And so I'm sure John and I will attend that, and maybe it could be appropriate for Steve and other folks on this call to be there if this is a hot topic that we'd like to discuss during that call. So that's another date to look at. But Richard, I think Ricardo, sorry, we talked about the reforestation is going to take place as soon as possible. It's somewhat dependent on the time of year and when you can plant different items, but the project should be substantially complete with construction in August, and actively looking to reforest as soon as possible, and throughout the following years, right? Because there's going to be opportunities, not just immediacy, but over time. And so did get one more comment, brighter street lights would be appreciated. So that's something we can definitely look into. So thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. This was great. Really understand that these are substantial impacts that are happening there. And we see that. Councilmember Rigg, myself, everyone from the city, we're huge tree advocates, and we want to see reforestation as much as we can. We also want to see people have a safe path to the bus stops, to the parks. Really, there are some pros, or there's plenty of pros, there's a few cons, and we're going to work through this together. But Councilmember Rigg, to close this out.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I really commended the work of the staff. I know that College Park Estates and Yarrow, you all are somewhat removed from the extremely strong work that our public works staff do in terms of contracting and construction, just simply because there hasn't been a lot in the College Park Estates or Yarrow community, and this is a big one for you guys. But I 100,000% stand behind the quality of the work done by this crew. Every project that they've undertaken in every community in the city, in my time as council, and before that as a civic association president, has been just of the highest quality. I mean, I'm sure people will still find nits to pick, but I have every confidence that you all will be very pleased and very proud of this project when it's finally completed. So please bear with us through the bumpy parts, because there will be bumps. It's not going to be perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. But I think it's going to be a really strong project and a great enhancement for the community. So I believe I speak for Stu and I when I say we're both deeply appreciative of staff work, but we're also deeply appreciative of the patience of the community, and we'll certainly stay in touch.
Thank you,
Thanks, everybody.
council members, for those comments. Appreciate it.
All right, bye everyone. Thank you so much.